Hey, indie filmmakers, I'm Griffin Hammond.
I'm Nick Bodmer, and on this week's episode, we have problems with SD cards.
Plus, your questions about the visual grammar of storytelling, pulling focus with electronic lenses, and the lenses I used on my latest film from Japan. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Mr. Hammond. How are you?
I'm good. Do you know where I am right now?
You are in Asia.
Yes. I'm on
Nailed
the
it. I don't know
small island of Singapore, which is right at the tip of Malaysia. If it weren't its own city, it'd be part of Malaysia.
I see. But it's also its own country?
Yeah, it's really a city-state country.
Right. And you're enjoying it there?
Yeah, Singapore is beautiful. It's a very modern city. And they speak English here, so it's probably the least culture shock of the three places I've been in the last few weeks. First Japan.
And is this the final stop of your Asian whirlwind tour?
Yes, yeah. We finished. Let's see. We're recording this on Monday, my Monday, your Sunday, and we finished production on Friday. We had 3 days of shooting in Tokyo, 3 days of shooting in Taipei, Taiwan, and 3 days of shooting in Singapore. And everything went super well. We've had a lot of rain here in Singapore, but it all happened 10 minutes after we stopped rolling our final day.
I very much enjoyed on your Instagram the photo of Amy with an umbrella frowning. In the background is the billboard that says Land of Eternal Sunshine.
Right.
I thought that was very funny. Well done.
Well, we're here in like the monsoon season, so it seems like on many afternoons it rains, and actually the last couple days it's just been kind of raining nonstop.
I am wearing my Vegas Golden Knights hat today. Griffin Hammond, you'll be happy to know the Vegas Golden Knights just won the Western Conference Finals against the Winnipeg Jets. Very exciting. They're going on to play for the Stanley Cup.
Nice.
Tremendous fun. So go
I don't
Knights.
even think I would know anything about this if it weren't for you and your enthusiasm for it.
It's pretty exciting. You know, they're a brand new team, and we're very much enjoying rooting them on. So
yeah,
that's going to be fun.
So today I want to talk about some problems that I've had with SD cards in the last few weeks.
You make me nervous when you're out on a big shoot and you have problems with SD cards, and I had to ask you to back up your footage.
The first one, I don't know if you would have seen this because I didn't post it as a picture on Instagram. I posted it to my story. Did you see that I broke an SD card?
No, I missed that. Like in half?
Yeah, pretty much.
Did it have important footage on it?
No, it had nothing on it. It was okay.
Oh, man.
But I opened up I have this little plastic case full of SD cards, and I'm not sure if one of them got put in wrong somehow, but when I opened it up, it actually had like a crack through one of the corners, like it had gotten pressure put on it. And actually, the SD card was probably fine. Like it was just kind of a cosmetic damage, but I just thought, I'm not going to put this back in the camera. And so, out of curiosity, I just tore the whole thing open. I kind of
just
kept
to see
pulling
what's inside.
Yeah. And maybe you already knew this, but did you know that it's just like, I don't know, the electronic data holding part of an SD card is less than half, probably a third of the card.
Yeah, I can imagine they're pretty small. They're probably using the same internals for micro SD and regular SD, and it's just the casing that's different.
Yeah, it's all the pins, all the metal pins that sit down at the bottom. That's, there's like a little piece in there that where all the pins and data go, and then the rest of it's just an empty plastic case that's just kind of holding its shape, so you can get that thing into the camera.
It's funny. So we have quite miniaturized this stuff.
Yeah. So that was interesting to me, just to like see what's actually inside an SD card. And then I went out, because I figured I should get another one to cover for that one. I went out and bought a new SD card, which is probably the first SD card I've purchased in maybe a couple of years. I got a
And did you find it like at an increase in price or normal price or cheap, or What was it like buying it in Singapore? Is this where you bought it?
Actually, no, I bought it in Taipei, so it's hard for me to even remember the pricing because the new Taiwanese dollar, it's 30 times. You have to divide it by 30 to get to the US dollar. So I don't even remember. I think I spent something in the ballpark of $30 maybe for a 64 gig SD card.
And it's a nice U2 or U3 high-speed card?
Yeah, it's a U3. It's a V30, so for video it guarantees, what, is that 30 megabits bits per second?
Megabytes.
Oh, it's megabytes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it says on it 90 megabytes per second, but of course that's the write or the read speed. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah,
I mean, correct,
so now,
not right.
But here's the actual problem I had with an SD card this week.
Oh, I thought that was it. Now I'm worried.
That was the thing that when I posted it, people freaked out. They were like, "Oh no, what's going on?" But the actual issue I had with an SD card this week was I actually brought with me I didn't tell you this last week. I got a Mavic Air.
I don't even know what that is.
The DJI Mavic Air, it's their latest. Well, you and I both have the Spark.
Right.
And then a year later, they came out with the Mavic Air, which is not much more expensive. It's $200 more, but actually it costs the same as the Fly More combo of the Spark. So I think it's $800, and it's a 4K, similarly sized drone.
Nice. Could you reuse the same remote, or did you have to buy that again too?
I imagine I could use the same remote, but this one actually, it comes with its own remote, so you don't really need the Fly More combo.
Oh, okay,
for this one.
Cool.
This one's pretty cool. It's already pretty small, about the size of the Spark, but then it unfolds to be a slightly bigger drone.
So why? I mean, so you had the Spark already. What made you say no? I need to upgrade to the Air.
Well, so I hired drone people, professional drone pilots in Taipei and in Singapore, but just as a backup. You know, I have a lot of redundancy on this client project. I brought redundant audio, and I just thought, you know, what if this falls through, or it turns out they're terrible or something? I don't know. I just thought I should also have my own way to capture 4K drone video for this client. And my Spark is only 1080, and so I just felt like I should probably have this as a backup. And it turned out to be useful because when I was in Taipei, I was able to operate recreationally under 60 meters without being a problem. And so I was able to get, in addition to the stuff that I paid for, I was also able to get some really cool footage on my own, like during the nice light of the morning. So I shot a few things, some beautiful kind of wilderness stuff in Taipei. But when I brought the footage back, it was kind of, every once in a while, it was kind of jerky.
Okay.
And at first
like
I thought, oh,
dropping frames or something?
Yeah, that's what it was. But at first I didn't realize it because I thought, oh, it's just maybe it's because I shot in 30 frames per second and I'm dropping it in a 24 frame timeline.
Now I'm following along. We're gonna get to your SD card problem. Got it. I forgot.
So yeah, you tell me what was the real problem.
You were not using a fast enough micro SD card for your 4K footage this bad boy was shooting. That's
true. Guess which SD card I was using?
You are using the one from your Spark that shoots 1080.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and so looking at that card, actually I have that card in front of me. It's a SanDisk 16 gigabyte class 10. That's it.
Not enough for 4K, my friend.
Yeah.
Good
so
try.
So remind me, class 10
So was it totally the same as U1?
Yeah, it says, or this one actually doesn't even say U1. Or maybe it does. It doesn't have a U, though. It just says 1. But it does have the circle around a 10. So it's class 10. And that means 10 megabytes per second?
Something like that, yeah.
I feel like we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago, and I already forget.
Yeah. Just go watch our episode if you want to know more. We can.
Let me go watch it real quick, and then I'll come back and talk about it. But, so this one's only class 10, and then I checked well, of course, all my footage that I captured was only coming across as, actually, I think it was able to write as much as like 11 megabytes per second. So it was able to cheat the card a little bit. But then later when I put a good card in, found that it really wanted to be recording around 13 megabytes per second. So we were close.
And was any of your stuff usable even with the drop frames or not really?
I think it probably is usable because, one, I barely noticed and only thought it was, you know, it's like if it's on the internet, people are just going to assume if they're seeing a dropped frame that it's just the internet. So I may be able to get away with using the footage. But part of me wonders, surely there must be a way, I've always kind of wondered this, in Final Cut or with a plugin, if you can do optical flow to create fake frames when you slow something down and need extra frames, is there a way to identify, I have some dropped frames here, can you fill in the gaps for me?
Gosh. I'm sure there is. I have no idea how to do it.
Yeah. It's weird because it's like variable. Like it's not like, oh, I need you to fill in every other frame. It's, I need you to fill in 4 frames right here, and then the rest of it's okay. So right. I don't know. It seems like every,
I was wondering if
second.
you could like split the clip where the drop frame is, and then trim like a couple frames before it, and then stretch that one out.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I could do it one gap at a time, kind of create like an independent clip and fool Final Cut into to creating some extra frames for me. I might even need to render things out. I might need to export things and then bring them back into Final Cut so Final Cut thinks it has to create, you know, I may have to
it's very confusing.
Force it to understand the timing. But yeah, there may be a way to do that.
Have you crashed any drones? Or you doing good?
I am doing well. I mean, I think flying the Spark, I mean, I'm ready to fly the Mavic Air. In fact, I think when I logged into my DJI app, I realized, oh, wow, this is like flight number 95 for me.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I didn't know it did that.
Yeah. Well, I was looking through my flight log because I was actually having some problems with the Mavic Air. And you know, I was flying around, you know, above me and away from me a little bit. And I think I was getting around 25 meters away from myself. And I'd start getting a weak transmission signal. And occasionally it would even say, like, RC signal lost for a moment.
And it's supposed to do, like, 4 kilometers or something, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be much further than that. And I was thinking, I was checking my flight log because I was thinking, the Spark, I would often fly it much further than that and never have an issue with transmission. And so I feel like something's either wrong with this model or something's up. This shouldn't be acting like this.
Maybe you need to exchange it or RMA it or something.
Yeah. I was actually having a bunch of issues. Like, the first thing I did when I tried to fly it was, and this kind of thing bothers me, because, like, I took it out of the box. I did a test flight in my apartment before I ever left and, you know, made sure I have the updated firmware and everything. And it's all set up perfectly. And then, of course, the moment I take it out in Taiwan to fly it, it's like not paired with the remote correctly. And it's just like, I did all this. Like, I shouldn't have to like go through the whole setup process again. And so I got it all, or at least I thought I got it all set up. And I did what I always do. I'm seeing the image through the phone. I click the takeoff button on the phone. It takes off. And then I go to use the RC remote, and it's not doing anything. And I realize I've only paired it with my phone and not the remote.
Oh, yeah. You kind of have to pair your phone with the controller and the controller with the plane, right?
Yeah, and somehow I think the process is slightly different on the Mavic Air than the Spark, and so it confused me, and I accidentally set up one thing and not the other. But then my drone is flying there at, 1 meter off the ground. It's like at eye level. And I can't land it because I don't know how to use the phone. I know the phone can be a remote, but I've never done it.
Oh, no.
And so I'm trying to hit the land button, and I've taken off from kind of it's like a safe area, but there's plants around. And so there's just leaves and stuff that are confusing the drone and telling it it shouldn't try to land there. And so I can't figure out how to land it. I'm thinking I could grab it right now, but it's probably going to fight me.
Try and remove the battery while it's hovering.
Yeah, so I can't actually even remember how I did it. I think somehow, after a few tries, I was able to make it land. But I was just like, this is going to be really dumb. I'm going to get like, it's just stuck here in midair.
It's just going to fly away. It's like, I don't know what to do. But you got it working, I take it.
Yes, yeah. I eventually got it going. And then after I got a new SD card, let's see, what did I get? Let me pull the SD card out, see which one I ended up buying. I think this was at the same time that I bought the 64 gig. Oh, you'll have to bear with me because this is one of the things that's hardest for me to do is pull the micro SD card out of the Mavic Air. Oh, I got it. It's a SanDisk Extreme 32 gig, so I doubled my size, which is nice. And this one's a V30. It's U3. What is that? UHS3.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this one's the same speed as my full size SD card. And it works perfectly.
Beautiful.
And I guess just for people that are curious, let me pull out the SD cards that the professionals used and gave me. They're also using micro SD cards. I have a Kingston 32 gig that is also a UHS3. This one's not rated as a V30, but probably just as fast. Then I also have a Toshiba 32 gig, which is also a UHS3. And also
were you impressed by the professional drone pilots? Were they doing things you would not have been comfortable attempting?
Yeah, I mean they were using. Let's see, the first pilot I hired was using a Phantom 4, a DJI Phantom 4, and the second pilot I hired used a Phantom 4 as like their test drone, which was smart because I think about this like a lot of times I turn on the drone, I'm setting some settings up. I'm doing all this stuff and I'm thinking like I just used like half the battery just like before my flight even started.
Right.
But these guys had a Phantom 4 to show me, the director, like here's what the shot might look like. Let's fly above the clouds real quick, or not above the clouds, above the trees. We don't even have to fly high enough to get a permit for this drone. Let's just fly high enough to show you like what the skyline looks like from here, and then come back down. Now let's send up these guys were using an Inspire 2.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, and on the Inspire, I don't know if you can do this on all the other DJI drones, but at least on the Inspire, they were able to have one pilot with one remote and then a camera operator with a second remote. So the pilot could just control.
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard that. That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah. So one guy's doing trajectory, one guy's doing the panning and tilting and focus and exposure.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to see the final project.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, like I said last week, this is for a corporate client, so it could take some time to, well, one, it'll take some time for me to finish it. But I did find assistant editors in New York that speak Japanese and Mandarin Chinese to help me with 2 of the films that are in language, and then the last one's in English.
Beautiful.
But yeah, once we get through this, once the client approves it, it'll go on the internet, and I'll be able to share it and do some more behind the scenes.
Cool. You want to answer some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Got a YouTube comment from Francisco Osorio. Why is it that in documentaries, people don't look into the camera? This show, I think he's talking about the podcast, starts with you guys looking directly into the camera, and then you turn to your monitors. We, the viewers, are left with a profile until the end of the show. So I'm going to look into the camera and talk to Griffin, and it feels weird, right? Because I'm talking to Griffin, not you.
Well, yeah, audience. So there's 2 things going on here, and I think we'll talk about visual grammar in a moment. But I think first of all, just on our show, it would be difficult to talk into a lens the whole time, right?
Yes, it would.
Like, I guess we turn to the lens at the beginning, or at least I do, to like acknowledge the audience is there. I'm looking at you right now. But it's easier for us to talk to each other without looking at the lens, and I think it creates the effect better that we're actually having a dialogue with each other.
Right.
Shot kind of like how you would shoot.
And, the part where we're looking at the camera at the beginning, I mean, we are talking directly to the audience at that point, right? And that's why we look at the camera. And
so
then when we switch to talking to each other,
yeah.
good.
And in documentaries, I mean, I find that if you try to have people look at the camera, it's hard for most people to talk into a lens. And so I think just from a practical standpoint, it makes sense to interview people looking off camera because it's easier. They're usually looking at a real human face, and you can give them actual feedback, and you can control their eye line. So from a practical standpoint, that makes sense. But then I often think about just the visual grammar of filmmaking that, especially in like nonfiction, usually when you're looking at the camera, you're signaling to the audience, I'm the author. Like if it's a newscaster, you know, you always have people doing a stand-up with their microphone outside, you know, a news event, and they're saying, hello, I'm the guy making this story, I'm the author. And then when they interview people, they're looking off camera, and it's just a quick way to signal to the audience who's in charge here and who's being quoted. And we call that visual grammar.
Okay, very good.
But are you familiar with the documentary about Robert McNamara called Fog of War? It's filmed by...
No.
Well, it's directed by Errol Morris. And maybe you've heard this before. It's for that film, they invented this technology called the Interrotron.
Oh, this is starting to sound familiar. Keep going.
This is like... They essentially turned a teleprompter into an interviewing system, almost like a periscope or something, where, you know, you look into a teleprompter so that you can look into the lens, but instead of the lens, you're actually seeing text that you're reading if you're a newscaster.
Right.
In the Interrotron, you look into the lens, and reflected on the mirror is the picture of Errol Morris, the director. Like, you're seeing live video of him. So as the interview subject, you are talking directly into the lens, but you're actually seeing the director, and you're able to carry on a conversation with him.
So it leaves, so the audience or the subject is talking directly into the lens, and the audience gets to see that, but they don't feel like they're talking right into a camera. Is that the idea?
Exactly. Yeah. It lets the subject feel at ease, maybe be more natural, but then gives you that unique perspective of looking right into the person's eyes. They're looking right back at you when they talk. But that's kind of the outlier example. Not most documentaries don't do that. Some documentaries break that rule and decide to look right into the lens. Here's an email we got from Nick, not you, Nick. Have either of you dealt with clients internationally? And if so, how did you deal with the issue of international transfer fees and time zone differences? You haven't. Do you have any international clients?
Not for video work. You know, for my full-time jobby job, I certainly have to work with people outside of the United States occasionally. And time zones can be tricky, though there's a surprising amount of overlap if if you're willing to stay late and they're willing to get up early, etc. You can usually schedule calls and things like that so that you can discuss what you need to discuss. Just takes a little planning.
I mean, that's what we're doing right now.
It's literally what we're doing right now. That's right.
So I am 15 hours ahead of you. I think this actually works out better that you're in Vegas right now than in New York. In New York, I'm 12 hours ahead, and the window seems to be a little bit smaller, but at least your evenings line up with my early afternoons.
It's perfect.
Yeah. As far as international transfer fees, I'm guessing he's talking about like wire fees or like sending money
like getting paid.
So yeah, in the last year, I've had international clients, so I'm getting paid by international people. And on this project, I will be paying people internationally, so I will have to wire some money. And I think in both cases, I haven't come up with like if there's a simple like quick pay sort of solution, like the way it's easy to send money in the U.S. to other U.S. people. But for international things, it's always just been a wire transfer. Everyone asks for like my routing number or my SWIFT code to send me money. And I think in most cases, I'm paying like a $15 fee, or a $15 fee comes off the payment when it's wired.
Good to know. Thank you, Griffin.
Yeah.
YouTube comment here from, oh boy, Terme Bergamo. How'd I do?
Yeah, Terme Bergamo.
Good. Hello, I love your show, and I have a question. When you use the slider with the crank, how do you pan to keep the camera tight on a subject's face?
That is a great question. And it's something that I've just avoided on the shoot that I'm on now.
Say, you don't.
Well, because what you could do is you could put a fluid head on top of the slider. And so as you're sliding with the crank, you could also be turning the pan of that head, or maybe you have a second person doing that. In my case, as we talked about last week, I actually broke one of my heads. And so I had to move my nice fluid head off the slider onto my other tripod. So I didn't have that opportunity. And luckily, as was the plan all along for this shoot, the slider was going to be a really wide shot. Like, especially because we're cropping this thing anamorphic. We pretty much have to fit the person's entire body in the shot. And so the slider is 20 feet away from the subject. And so it actually looks pretty cool just to keep it completely parallel. And so in that 3 feet of travel that we have on the slider, the person is kind of moving from one side of the shot to the other side of the shot, but they're never going out of frame. You're right, though, that if this was a close-up, they would just be going in and out of frame the whole time. And so you definitely you would need to pan with a fluid head as well.
Could you do that by yourself, you think, or would that take two operators?
I'm trying to go through the motion right now. Crank with one hand.
Pat your head and rub your belly. No.
I mean, one thing that would make it more possible and maybe made our shoot a little bit easier was that I also put a monitor attached to one of the tripod legs hooked up to the camera, because I just figured it might be a little bit hard to like follow the slider camera with your head, keep an eye on that little LCD, and make sure that you might get kind of disoriented. So I think having the monitor made it easier, and probably would make it a little bit easier to do a pan while sliding and ensure that you're getting the shot you want. I think it'd be possible. Cool. I guess I would hate to do it live. Like, I like that we were doing an interview with 2 cameras, and I'll have the ability to edit later and figure out which parts look good and which don't. I can cover up bad parts. But if I was doing this like live to tape or something, I wouldn't be very comfortable with that. Do you want to read this YouTube comment from Zach8133?
I sure do. I've been trying to pull focus with my native Lumix lenses, but it's very difficult to nail focus when the lens doesn't have a hard stop. I've recently learned that people usually use manual lenses when doing this because they have hard stops and distance markers. I'm wondering how much focus pulling you do on shoots and what lenses you use. How do you do this on the Lumix 12-35?
Zach is right that it's difficult to pull focus on Panasonic Lumix lenses.
On electronically focused lenses, right?
Yeah, they also call these fly-by-wire lenses, where the focus ring is not mechanically turning focus. It's just an electronic wheel that is telling the lens to move. And the problem is they just spin to infinity. You could just spin forever. And so there's no hard stop like he's talking about. A mechanical focus ring is certainly easier to do repeatable focus moves, and you could make marks on the lens if you need to, put tape on it, and you could redo the same focus pulling over and over and over again. So I just don't and can't do that on my Lumix lenses, but I'm also not really a focus pulling guy.
Right.
I mean, I'm not doing repeatable focus a lot. So usually if I'm doing a documentary style shoot and I need to pull focus, I just flip it into manual. I have focus peaking, and I can see what becomes in focus with the focus peaking while I turn it. So I'm not marking the lens or memorizing the exact move. I'm just kind of doing it on the fly and seeing how to hit my focus with focus peaking.
Now, isn't there also a way to kind of do focus pulling with the touch screen, where you like focus on one thing and then you touch something and it'll pull focus to that new?
Yes, although I wouldn't necessarily trust touching the screen to focus, because it might do it quickly, or it might hunt a little bit.
I've never been able to do it successfully, but I think they talk about that as a feature.
Well, I wouldn't do it on the fly with touch, but you can. There is a feature in the GH5 called focus transition. I think it's in some of the other. Your G85 may have it as well. Okay. And focus transition lets you set focus electronically to 2 points or even 3 points, I think, and then set the speed between them. So yeah, actually that's kind of the solution to having these lenses that don't let you do necessarily repeatable focus, is you could do that with focus transition built into the camera. So we had a couple questions on my latest video, one of the videos I published to YouTube about Kyoto. I made that like anamorphic film about my time in Kyoto, Japan.
Yep. And
people wanted to know, one, what lenses I used, and two, like what picture profile and color grading I did. So I used a few different lenses, and it's the same lenses that I'm using for this client project that I'm shooting. I've relied a lot on some of my primes, like the 42.5 by Lumix, and then also the 25 millimeter, which is I have the f1.4 25 millimeter. Those have been kind of my favorite, like cinematic. I was gonna say cinematograph.
That should be your online handle, Cinemagriff.
Yeah. A cinemagriff is any film made by Griffin Hammond. So I've been using those lenses a lot, and then I also used the 8-18 just for some of my more the wider shots,
the wide angle stuff.
Yeah, so I was using those lenses on the gimbal to get everything in the Kyoto video, and then I shot everything in V-Log because that's how I'm shooting the client project, and then I'm gonna have a colorist tweak the color for my client project. But for the simple, quick edit I did for YouTube, I've just been using a LUT. I think I've shared it before. I'll put it in the show notes at Hey.film for this week. But it's just a LUT called GH5 V-Log to VariCam. It's like, make it look like VariCam. But it seems to be just a nice normalizing LUT for the V-Log footage that I'm shooting.
It's kind of a cool LUT though, right? I haven't watched that in a week or so, but I'm thinking it's kind of a little blue. Am I blue-greeny?
Yeah,
crazy?
Yeah. I feel like the combination of that LUT and also I think V-Log just kind of helps me bring out more greens that I don't normally see in my natural color profile that I'm shooting with right now. And so I've kind of embraced that look, especially when I'm going to all these very woodsy places in Asia. I want that green look. So sometimes, I mean, I get a nice, it seems to come out pretty nicely with V-Log and with the LUT, but sometimes I also find myself pushing the greens up in the shadows a little bit because I really like that.
And the blacks are not crazy black either, I'm noticing.
Yeah, I'm letting I'm using the waveform, so I'll pop open in Final Cut. You can just hit Command 7 to pop open the waveform, and then also Command 6 to pop open the color panel. And I'll usually adjust the exposure a little bit, maybe to increase the contrast, but I'm kind of not letting my shadows drop all the way to 0 and not letting my highlights go all the way up to 100. I'm kind of leaving a little gap there, which creates that kind of that slightly less contrasty look that you're seeing a lot right now in photos and video.
I like it.
Yeah. So we have a YouTube comment from Sam Benyon Video, who loves the podcast and just wondering if we have any plans to put it on Spotify.
I didn't know podcasts were on Spotify.
They are now. And so a lot of people have actually asked me this, and I was curious how to do it. And for a while, Spotify wasn't really, I think they were just kind of hand-picking things. At the moment, it's not as easy to get something on Spotify as it is on iTunes. I mean, iTunes is just drawing right from our RSS feed, so anyone can put a podcast on iTunes and many other platforms just through an RSS feed. But Spotify says they're pulling from a few different sources. They actually, I can link to this in the show notes, but they use anything that's published to Audio Boom, Blueberry, Buzzsprout, Fireside, Libsyn, Pippa, Podbean, Podagree, Podomatic, Simplecast, or Spreaker. All can be
obviously
automatically. Those can all be pulled into Spotify. We're not on any of those.
No, we self-host with Squarespace.
With Squarespace, yeah. We're just on our own website doing our own hosting and sharing the RSS feed. So Spotify says there's a form that you can fill out if you're not on one of those platforms to get it on there, and I've actually submitted it. maybe a month ago. I guess I should check, but I don't
so
think we're on.
Far, no love.
Yeah.
Let's look.
Yeah,
I don't have Spotify installed. I can look on my phone. Let's take a peek.
While Nick's looking at that, I'm going to read a quick email from Bruce Gogan, who is actually looking for some people to help him with an upcoming gig. And so I told him I'd put the call out to anyone that may be in the Boston, Massachusetts area and wants to help out on this project. This is a non-paid project, but maybe you're interested in the subject matter. He's shooting the Special Olympics in Boston coming up, and there's a few different things going on. There's the events happening in Boston, and then I guess they're also doing this big cruiser convoy of police cruisers from all across the state converging on Boston. So he needs some people to help him in the Boston area, but then he also needs people around the state to film portions of this. So if you have any interest in that, he's looking for people that can shoot 1080, 30 frames per second. And like I said, it's not paid, but if you are looking for something fun to shoot and want to participate, then you can email him at gig@eventsondvd.com. I'll also put that email in the show notes at Hey.film. So yeah, if you're interested, let him know.
We do not appear to be on Spotify. I'm sorry to say.
Well, maybe it'll eventually go through.
Someday.
Well, that's it for this week.
Boom. Golden Knights.
This is actually episode 64. So that's a multiple of 8, and every 8 episodes we take a 1-week break. So
Season
next
break.
week, May 30th, will be a quick bonus episode, and we'll be back with a full-length episode on Wednesday, June 6th.
Fantastic.
And that's June 6th is actually just 2 days before my keynote at the PhotoCon Los Angeles trade show.
All right, that's when we cross in the sky as I head to New York and you leave it.
Right.
Just too bad.
And then maybe we'll have a chance after that. I think I'm going to see you right after that. So
yeah,
maybe we'll have a chance to finally record an
in-person episode.
Yeah.
We might be too busy watching the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup.
When will we know if that... I don't even know when the Stanley Cup is.
They always have... You don't know the exact dates, but I have a feeling like next weekend they'll probably start.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me know how it goes.
Will do. Thank you, sir. All right, everybody.
All right.
It has been a pleasure. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
I got all sorts of lights right now. Last week I was just using the natural light from the window in my hotel, but this time I'm using the natural light as a key light. Then I have one of my LED lights set up as a fill, and then I even threw another LED in the closet to light it up.
It's tremendous. Just tremendous.